This meeting is being recorded.
Hello and welcome to this IsleVote21 online meeting for the Isle of Wight County Council seat of Ryde South East. A brief word for the benefit of the public. IsleVote21 has been formed with the sole purpose of enhancing democracy by providing an unbiased platform for candidates. We have no affiliations or funding and no candidates are aware of what questions will be asked today. However, a list of topics was distributed in advance to enable candidates to prepare. All 138 candidates in this year's County Council election have been invited, either directly or via group and party leaders. The following candidates have been invited to this meeting. Warren Drew, Conservative Party. Tracy Mikich, is that correct, Tracy, my pronunciation?
Yeah, like an itch you can't scratch.
Okay, you said it, Tracy Mikich, Liberal Democrats. Jessica Higgins, Ireland Independent Network. Natalie Thomas, the Green Party. Emily Brothers, Labour Party. And joining us are Tracy, Natalie and Emily. Candidates will be asked questions from our pool of questions, plus others that have been submitted by the public regarding island-wide issues and their specific locality. Candidates have been informed that there is a 2-minute limitation on answers. I will raise my hand as we approach that cutoff, and I request that the candidate finishes up promptly afterwards. Before the candidates' questions commence, the candidates have 2 minutes to give a personal statement. Tracy, would you like to give your statement, please?
Yeah, hi, my name's Tracy and I'm standing for Ryde South East. I suppose the main reason that I'm standing is literally to make a difference, to represent maybe people who feel like they're not currently represented, and to work towards having a future for the island that is greener, more fairer and more caring, I suppose. So those are my sort of motivations for standing. I've had experience in working with various charities on the island to level up people, giving people opportunities, and I just feel that this is possibly the next step. So it's actually putting myself out there to, you know, to serve others.
Okay, Tracy, thank you very much. Emily, would you like to go ahead?
Yes, hi. Thank you very much to IsleVote21 for giving us the opportunity to speak directly to local residents. I would be proud to represent and speak up for local people on the council, to act very much as an agent for change, to make a difference to the lives of families in the area. I think my 30 years background as both an activist and professionally working in the voluntary and public sector demonstrates a commitment to service, but also integrity, a willingness to engage and represent a variety of interests. My work has included particularly around issues of equality and human rights. I'm a disabled person myself, so that lived experience of finding things tough at times, inaccessible services, discrimination and prejudice, acting as a barrier is something I want to break down, not just for disabled people, but people with other inequalities that they experience locally and across the island. And that's very much my mission for local residents and businesses. The Labour Party, who I am proud to represent, is aiming to share community wealth. So we see a greater balance of assets. We see more spending locally that enables fairness in terms of delivering better education and skills development for young people. We want to invest in local businesses to bring about measures that will challenge climate change, regenerate our housing and high streets, which are struggling in very difficult times. I want to take this opportunity also to thank all those voluntary and public servants at this time when we're coming out of lockdown for the strenuous efforts they have made
Emily,
in protecting our interests.
sorry, can I stop you?
I want to build on that endeavour and to represent the local people of Ryde South East. Thank you.
I do apologise. I was muted then. I did try to intervene at 1 minute 45. So that's the first mute incident. I'm sure it possibly won't be the last. So I do apologise. Natalie, would you like to go ahead, please, and give your opening statement?
Absolutely. My name's Natalie Jane Thomas, and I'm standing for the Green Party for the Ryde South East ward. So one of the reasons why I'm standing this year is because there's currently a lack of young people involved in local democracy. Having a 6-year-old, I see the world for what it is. I see the struggles as a single parent. And I think especially with the demographics of Oakfield, there's a lot of families there. And I think one of the strengths that I have is I understand the challenges that the families have to deal with on a daily basis, because I think one of the issues that some leaders have is they don't understand and they can't relate to the struggles that families are having to deal with. And I think one of the things that I'm also passionate about is creating a trauma-informed community. So that basically involves all charities, organisations, schools, political officials working together to basically address quite a lot of the root causes that are happening on the island. So that's things like drugs, alcohol misuse, and everything like that. So that's one of the reasons why I thought, okay, with the 2 years voluntary experience that I have, let's take it one step further and be that person that other mums can look at and go, okay, if we've got a mum that's in her 30s standing up and being proud for seeing change in the community, then why can't I? Thank you.
All right, super. Thank you all very much. So now we're going to get into the first few questions that have been devised by us and pored over quite extensively. The first one's quite tough, and it's for you, Tracy, but in due course, I think it gets a little bit easier. Tracy, could you suggest a new policy that the council could pursue on the island?
Well, I suppose one of the immediate things would be housing, because there is this dearth of failure to build houses to keep up with the demand. But I suppose for me, I was involved in a project earlier on last year, which is to do with intergenerational care. And I would probably like to see something along the lines of nursery homes integrated into residential homes. I think that there's good outcomes for both, school children and sort of elderly residents. I think it's a really great way of meshing communities, and I think where the island has a sort of top-heavy population, elderly population, that this kind of initiative, which is innovative and I think fairly easy to do and scale up, may put the island sort of leading the way into intergenerational care. So yeah, I think that would probably I'd be interested in seeing.
Okay, very good. Thank you very much. And the same question to you, Emily, a new policy the council could pursue on the island.
Yes, I think the heart of anything the council needs to do is around the economy. And so I believe it's about community wealth and building on the experience of other councils who have very much focused on investing in their local community. So, for example, Preston and Southampton. Community wealth is basically about using the resources and the of Britain's like procurement policy of the council to spend its money in terms of services and goods on local businesses rather than on mainland services. It's about investing part of the council pension fund in buildings such as farmland. We see many councils drawing on income from rents on businesses, farmland, and using that in order to provide services. I think it's been demonstrated over the last decade that depending on central government is not good enough, because what we've seen is austerity on local families and cuts to local services. So we need to see a policy that uses council resources to invest in our local community, in local businesses, so that that money, which the Labour Party believes could generate 40 to 60 million pounds per year new income,
Emily?
can be used for the benefit of our community rather than going elsewhere across to the mainland.
Thank you very much. And to you, Natalie, a new policy the council could pursue on the island, please.
So I see one of the new policies that the council could adopt is a trauma-informed policy. So that would then be worked into multiple sectors on the island, because one of the things that's quite prominent right now is the impact of the COVID pandemic and the trauma multiple people in society have experienced from COVID. So that would be looking at involving schools in a trauma-informed practice, because at the end of the day, the education system right now has got its flaws. And I think being a mum, I've seen firsthand what COVID and the pandemic has done to my daughter. And I think that would be something really beneficial just as we start moving forward from COVID-19. And again, because of the increase of mental health need on the island, just adopting the understanding of, okay, well, what has happened to you for being in this position right now, for why you're needing mental health support. So that would be the policies that I would want the Isle of Wight Council to adopt.
Okay, thank you, Natalie. It's very interesting. So, Emily, this question is going to be for you first. How can residents become more confident and engaged with the council's decision-making processes?
I think the critical thing is that the local councillor needs to engage with them. So that is about casework, so supporting people on an individual basis where they may have concerns or a particular issue. It might be around parking or planning. It may be around accessing adult social care where they are having barriers in terms of the bureaucracy of the council. So very much acting as a caseworker to solve individual issues in terms of accessing local services, being an advocate for local people and breaking down the barriers. But I think also on the wider issues, championing local business and local regeneration in the high street in terms of housing, in meeting local needs in terms of, say, affordable housing or access to good quality education for their children. So it's about having those conversations with local people. It's about listening to people's concerns. And when things are getting tough, be willing to be open to look at things in a different way, taking on a range of ideas. It's not just representing, yes, the interests and the values of my party, Labour, but it's also about reaching across the community to provide the best solutions for local people.
Super. Thank you very much, Emily. Same question to you, Natalie. about fostering confidence in the decision-making processes?
So I think when it comes to decision making, what there needs to be is more of an influence of people actually being in the community. And I think in some respects, like the current councillors are just stuck in an office, and I understand and respect that. But I think there needs to be a lot more emphasis in the grassroots community-led work, because children are powerful little people. And you think to yourself, if you had a counsellor going into school and just talking about what they do, that could be a great conversation starter. Mummy, this person was at school today, and that might then start opening up conversations with people that might not be involved within local democracy, because this is something that I clearly see right now with a lot of 30-year-olds. They don't care, because it's kind of like nobody's there for them. And I think it's kind of like identifying that a lot of people in their 30s are parents and using their children just to start these conversations, because then I think we can then identify where the need is in the community, and then the right policies can be put in place to address them. Thank you.
Super. Okay, thank you very much. So the same question to you now, Tracy, fostering confidence in the decision-making processes.
Well, I agree with both Emily and Natalie. You've got to be more available. So I think councillors have to be more available, you know, for example, having a weekly surgery and, you know, in a community area where people can access you. So then you get the direct information. We can do more, having to connect with our residents with surveys, for example. I've, you know, just recently done a survey, so that was quite interesting to find out the needs. Then that will foster trust in their representation. I think that the council can do more, obviously, on social media. Everyone seems to be on social media, so getting information to people so that they can ask questions at scrutiny and full council, which I do. I'm a bit of a pain in the neck with that. You know, maybe having more awareness of the forums that you can get to get your questions and your views you know, in front of people. I think that they recently, the council had 30 High Street on the High Street, which is like a walk-in venue. I think those kind of things, maybe use empty shops, you know, so that you can actually access councils on the High Street. And the other thing is, as we know, everything's done through consultation. So advertising consultation opportunities for the public to come in and give their opinion or their views is really important. So yeah, I mean, you know, that's what I would think.
Okay, thank you very much. So Natalie, this question is going to be for you first. You can take it as seriously as you like. It's entirely up to you. You have been given £20 million to spend on projects to revitalise the island. What springs to mind that would give the maximum benefits?
So I think, with the understanding and knowledge that I have with trauma-informed practice, it'd be adopting a trauma-informed practice across the island, because you have to look at the fact that there's a lot of unemployment. Yes, the economy is really important and that needs addressing, but I think addressing trauma from the beginning of people's lives and putting the right prevention in place in the beginning has then got the potential to save the council money in the long term, because then putting the money in the beginning stops people needing pupil referral, it stops people having to rely on mental health services, because you've actually addressed the problem in the beginning. Because I think this is one of the reasons why society's in the mess that it's in, and I think it's kind of just shifting the focus and dealing with things in the beginning, because then doing it that way means you've got a workforce in the future, so then the economy will gain, because you've got a workforce there that are able to actually go out and work.
Okay, thank you very much. The same question to you, Tracy. £20 million being parachuted in. How are you going to spend it for the island?
Gosh. Well, I suppose the first thing, buy a new floating bridge. So just let's call a line under that one and I'd just buy a new floating bridge. I think the rest of the money, it's tough. I'd probably try and put it into special education needs provision, because there's massive gaps with children who are waiting for diagnosis. I have personal experience of, you know, when things take too long and children spiraling out of control. So I think I'd probably want to do a job lot into SEN provision on the Isle of Wight, and working, you know, ways for people to, for children to get earlier diagnosis, have more resources and more support around that, because there are significant outcomes, as Natalie mentioned, if you have a poor education, poor social outcomes, and especially, you know, at this point in time when special education needs are not, you know, not dealt with as quickly as they could be, which causes, you know, great pain for families and has, you know, and can have not great outcomes for the child.
Thank you very much, Tracy. Same question to you, Emily.
Okay, well, I would use the £20 million to spearhead a investment strategy. So I'd want to use that money to invest in local land, buildings and businesses in order to generate investment income that could then be used in the medium to long term to fund a whole range of other services around education, transport, housing. I would want to use some of that investment money to build council houses, to enable affordable homes for local families, utilising brownfield sites. So for me, it would be very much about using an additional £20 million to spearhead opportunities locally here on the island, investing it on the island so that it generates good quality jobs and therefore income around the island too, in particular in Ryde South East. So basically it's a circle that provides opportunities for people in terms of quality jobs, opportunities to spend here on the island, and indeed longer term investment income for council services. And I think that seamless strategic approach would bring about community wealth for everybody here in Ryde South East and elsewhere on the Isle of Wight.
Okay, thank you all very much. Great answers. Tracy, it's back to you already for to be first in the firing line. So the volunteer sector carries a great deal of weight on the island, especially during the COVID crisis, which is to the great relief of taxpayer funded services. Can you suggest ways in which the council can support this sector?
Well, yes, I mean, we do have to commend the volunteer sector, you know, for the amazing work that they've done stepping in. I suppose a lot of, you know, like, for example, Aspire, they work Aspire in Ryde work hand in hand with the Ryde Town Council and also the various charities. I guess you just, you know, I suppose you just continually raise awareness. There's a, you know, good dialogue between the organisations, and the councils just continue to support them, which I think they're doing anyway at the moment anyway. So yeah.
Okay. Thank you. And the same question to you, Emily, about the council supporting the voluntary sector.
Yes, so it comes back to my theme about investing in as well as local businesses, but also voluntary sector. So looking, for example, at capacity in terms of buildings, it may be utilising empty shops, buying some of them. So voluntary organisations, arts and community groups can utilise them. I think it's also about recognising some of the challenges and seeking to work with the voluntary sector to bring in funding from central and regional sources, challenging government, central government at times on issues around access to services so that funding can be provided to the voluntary and community sector. So very much working alongside them, those groups, in order to bring in resources, but also to challenge some of the barriers and break them down so that those organisations can use them for local people. So very much a partnership, and having a regular dialogue. So voluntary sector forums, working with trustees and officers of voluntary groups in order to understand the challenges they face on a day-to-day basis and how the council might best facilitate how they do things in a way that is going to meet needs of local families.
Okay, thank you very much, Emily. And finally to you, Natalie, question about supporting the voluntary sector.
So as we've clearly seen through COVID, the amazing work that the voluntary sector does, I think where the voluntary sector spans across so many different independent sectors. So obviously you've got voluntary sectors looking after animals, children, you name it, they're all in there. Building that relationship when it comes to actually using the experience of these voluntary sectors to actually start influencing what actually goes on in County Hull. Because at the end of the day, these volunteers are going to be working with real people, seeing real life stories. And at the end of the day, when that person's there making that policy about mental health, listening to those stories, I think could be a really powerful way to actually share the credit and the amazing work that actually goes on there, because you can find a lot. And I think in the 15 to 20 hours a week that I do voluntary, I've seen the power of people's stories and the impact that it can actually have on decision making. And I think that would be really good moving forward, because then you're actually appreciating the amazing work that all of these volunteers across multiple sectors do. Like, say, for example, using the food bank and actually listening to what goes on there and actually going, okay, County Council, this is what it's actually like. Because how can somebody that's on £30,000-40,000 a year actually understand the struggles that the families in Oakfield have? So if you've got that key representative that in a way is the advocate there, then at least that's sorted. Thank you.
Okay, thank you very much. I think all three of you mentioned about listening to the stories of people, and I have to agree, because data is one thing, but it's very grey, isn't it? And it's the individual stories where you find out about both very, very wonderful things and very terrible things. They can be much more informative than just data. Emily, this one's going to be for you first. Oh, I should note the last question and the next two are both being submitted by the public, okay? Or they're amalgams of many questions that the public have sent in to us. Emily, what would you do to address all the empty shops in each town? The main streets are dying. What should the council do to specifically address this issue?
Yeah, well, we have many towns are struggling even before the pandemic, and easing out of lockdown is going to be very challenging. So they will change. I think it's about looking at what people might need in a local community. So it's not just about shops, but also about how those empty shops can perhaps be refitted in order to provide community spaces. It may also be to do things differently, like internal markets, to use some buildings in terms of perhaps redeveloping and having flats. It's also about having the experience. So shopping isn't just about going around and buying, but also it's about meeting people and doing things together, whether it's a coffee or tea, but also potentially other activities. So and being a tourist destination for many towns around the island, and then that provides opportunities too. I think we can also use empty shops and high streets areas to for startup businesses, incubator businesses. So to buy some of those shops and lease them out at low levels to startup companies to bring about job opportunities for local people to
Emily?
thrive in terms of enterprise.
Okay, super. Thank you very much, Emily. The same question to you, Natalie. It's basically high street regeneration, isn't it?
So similar to what Emily just mentioned about investing in small businesses. As a mum, I live on Facebook and I see how many parents are doing small businesses from home. And I look at it, we've got this amazing resource on the high street that could be life-changing for a lot of parents and families if they have this space there. So I think one of the ways that they could address reusing this space is by making it cheaper and a bit more affordable, so people can, in a way, get on that ladder. So similar to the housing ladder, getting away on the business ladder, because at the end of the day, especially people in Ryde South East, not having a great income, starting a business could be a dream so far away. But if the council was to just address and just tweak it, you'd be giving a lot of people a really good opportunity. And I think then you'd get the innovative ideas that the community really need. So that would be how I see the high street being regenerated, is just by changing tactics and using what we've got and being creative in the way that we do it.
Okay, thank you very much. And finally, over to you, Tracy, high street regeneration.
Well, first of all, you can't force a landlord to do anything with an empty shop. You know, that's hard work. You know, and quite often they've been sitting on their property because their property's increased in prices and it doesn't pay them to get cheaper, you know, tenants in. It's not worth the fuss. So that's been a sort of a historical problem. Regarding towns, we've seen two successful heritage high street bids. So Ryde and Newport both applied for money. So I would continue to look and actively pursue all the funding streams. I've successfully written bids before. So I run a sort of regeneration project in Sandown, which was in a former empty shop. Then there's ideas about improving the public realm. Maybe some of the towns need to have pedestrianised areas. As Emily mentioned, market days is a great way of markets and, you know, different maybe themed markets or another way of kind of bringing people back into the high streets. Pop-up shops, you know, also maybe converting some of the empty shops into housing stock, or some of the you know, above the empty shops into housing stock. So you're bringing more people, residents into the town, so they, you know, will naturally use their sort of home turf. So I mean, it's a complicated, you know, a complex issue. We've kind of all contributed towards the death of the high street because we choose to buy online and buy in supermarkets, and reinventing the high street, which is what it really is quite a complicated issue. So
agreed. Okay, thank you very much, Tracy. Natalie, we have had many questions pertaining to cross-Solent travel links, ferries, reliabilities and costs. How would you address existing concerns, and do you have a vision for improved connectivity?
I think when it comes to the network between the Isle of Wight and the mainland, I think one of the things that needs to be addressed straight away is the cost of it, because people living in Ryde South East with the income that they have, going to the mainland is a luxury. And I think if we're going to look at investing, there's got to be a reduction to help us bounce back, because at the end of the day, we've spent so much money as a country just to survive COVID. And I think we would be silly to waste any more money on building a bridge. I think it's just identifying, okay, we need investment from other businesses from the mainland to the island, but equally for the economy, we need to be out there spending money. And I look at it as a parent, if it's going to cost me £30 to £40 just to get to the mainland, that £40 could go in a food shop. Whereas if it was £20 to get to the mainland, it'd be a little bit more achievable to go and do. So I'd look at making it cheaper and just working with the ferry companies just to say, look, we've all been impacted by COVID. Nobody has been spared. Let's work together because we'll all gain at the end of the day.
Okay, thanks ever so much. And to you, Tracy, cross-Solent travel links.
Well, again, this is the perennial rage against the machine. There's really nothing we can do about it. They're private companies. For me, you know, nationalising the service again, because I feel we pay the price. We can't move off the island to get jobs because of the cost involved in you know, travelling throughout the year. So, yeah, I mean, what do? You request subsidies from the government so that they can subsidise islanders to get off island. You know, work with the ferry companies with their you know, little kind of handouts that they give us so that we can get off cheaper. Possibly, you know, actually invest in a feasibility study for a fixed link, but then do you want more cars over here? No, we already have too many cars on the island. So I mean, it comes up time and time again. We've had MPs raise it, Office of Fair Trading deal with the issues, and we just go round and round in circles. Like I said, it's rage against the machine. So you know, it will be in when's the next you say election for things, we'll be talking about the cross ferry Solent travel again. I suppose carry on, you know, obviously people with health things, the subsidies, you know, to go to the hospital appointments, etc., are really important to keep those in place.
Thank you, Tracy. So over to you, please, Emily.
Yes, well, I think there are things we can do to improve what is a lamentable situation. The cost is very significant for islanders, and that needs to be addressed in the short to medium term. And I think that can be done through service level agreements with ferry providers, and as we could do with other transport providers, such as around buses and roads, for example. So in terms of cross-Solent travel, then I think service level agreements to expect a level of service and reasonable price. And if that means that existing powers are not sufficient, then I would want the council, and I'd be advocating on the council to make representations with government to devolve those powers to the council so that quality services at a reasonable price can be provided. In the longer term, of course, we need to look at a fixed Solent link, and for a feasibility study should be set up. And I'm not particularly feeling strong in favour of one option or another, or indeed whether it should go ahead. And that might depend on the success or otherwise of challenging and dealing with the costs of current forms of travelling across the Solent. It's a critical issue, and something we must do something about. And and ideally working with the ferry operators and central government in order to bring about change through service level agreements by regulating and having oversight of their performance
Emily,
and their costs for local people.
thank you very much. So we're on to the last question now, and and you're going to get it first, Tracy, but it's a relatively gentle one, I think, unlike the first, which I thought was pretty tough. Knowing your local community as you do, what local issue would you like to address that you know is of concern to residents?
In the Ryde South East, so I recently did a survey, and the survey results came back, and people are concerned with antisocial behaviour, rubbish accumulation, you know, dog fouling, sort of various things that make the quality of life on a day-to-day basis you know, you affect your quality of life on a day-to-day basis. The other thing was, you know, the children's sort of green spaces came up, and having better investment in that. So maybe along the lines of, there is quite, you know, a significant green area in Ryde South East, is to work towards a community project that around the Arc and all the green spaces there, and develop a community initiative around that to create a sort of a significant green park area. So yeah, I think that could work, because it would bring various elements together, youth, all all levels of the population it would involve, and yeah, I think maybe work around some community project around the Arc and the green spaces in Ryde South East.
Okay, thank you very much. Emily, knowing your community as you do, what issue would you like to address that you know is of concern to residents?
I think that looking at developing the local community in terms of community and green spaces, so improving the local area in terms of its quality, in terms of its green space, in terms of places where people can go and enjoy themselves in groups and activities that families and friends can get together in open spaces. I think one of the I moved to the island only last year, and one of the major attractions is, of course, it's open spaces and being able to do things outside. And I think that is critical in terms of generating a positive future. So open spaces, community spaces, so that people can do things together, and I think also just improving it for healthy lives. So older populations, for people keeping fit and maintaining healthy lives, means that our green spaces are very important, and that's what I would want to see for Ryde South East and local families.
Thank you, Emily. So over to you, Natalie, the last question.
Thank you. So we've mentioned some really good points from Emily and Tracy, and I think one of the other things that would need to be addressed in Ryde South East is ensuring there's better paid employment for families, because at the end of the day, if people are working on the minimum wage and struggling and living in poverty, like statistics show, that's going to have a knock-on effect on how much disposable income can actually be spent in the local community. I think it's great identifying about the green spaces, but I think if people have got an extra £30–40 spare each month, everybody gains, people's mental health gain, and the community has just got that sense of pride that can help them bounce back, especially from COVID. And I think it'd be also looking at building more resources in the community for families, and for young people, because I think young people especially are the people that have been really impacted by COVID. And I think ensuring their mental health and ensuring that they've got the right support would be things that I'd want to address and just start putting in place in Ryde South East.
Okay, thank you very much, Natalie. So as you'll know from the format that was sent out previously, there's now an opportunity to wrap up. So Tracy, if you'd like to take a minute or two.
Well, you know, I think you've got some, Ryde's got, we've got 5 of us in total. So there's a lot of people that want to represent you, Ryde South East. And, you know, today I think you can see we've got really good, you know, everyone's got a good heart and wants to do the right thing. Obviously, I'm the Liberal Democrat. I live locally. I feel passionate about levelling up society. So I'm hoping that you vote for me, but I trust you know, whoever you vote for to get the best representation.
So long as it's a IsleVote21 participant.
Yeah.
I can't even edit that out because we're not sending any edits. We're not doing any edits whatsoever. But yeah, I take this opportunity now to thank all 3 of you for attending. Emily, please, same opportunity to wrap up.
Yes, well, thank you to the other candidates who have joined us today, and it's very disappointing that others have chosen not to engage with local people. But certainly thank you to Natalie and Tracy, and I hope to work with local residents in Ryde South East to bring about better opportunities, a better future. That involves community wealth, sharing it so that we can invest in local services and generate more income to bring about improved delivery of things locally, such as improved business, education and health. Labour, who I'm proud to represent, is seeking to take forward an investment strategy that will bring about community wealth, which will regenerate our high streets and will also bring about affordable lifetime homes which are accessible for disabled and older people throughout their lives. To strengthen our connectivity in terms of transport, more buses around the island, as well as cross-Solent travel, which is more affordable. I want also to see improved environment in terms of green spaces to stop fracking and oil exploration on the island too. I want to see us strengthen and build on the endeavours that we've seen from public and voluntary services during the pandemic to bring
Emily?
that community spirit to the fore again, so that we can share in the wealth of people in Ryde South East. And thank you for this opportunity.
Thank you very much, Emily. Okay, Natalie, please go ahead.
Thank you. So as mentioned, I am the Green candidate for Ryde South East. I'd like to thank everybody for this opportunity today. So one of the reasons why I believe that I would be good as the candidate, one of the reasons why I think I'd be good as the councillor for Ryde South East is because I understand the challenges that families face. I'm prepared to listen to what the struggles are all about, because I think that's one of the downfalls. People don't want to attentively listen and take on board people's struggles, and that's something that I'm prepared to do. And as a new business owner, I understand what the transition is like, going from benefits and actually taking that leap of faith of trying to do something new. So I feel that I've got a lot to give to the community of Ryde South East. Thank you.
Okay, so once again, I'd like to thank all 3 of you for attending. I've really enjoyed the meeting. 3 great candidates, and good luck to all 3 of you. Thank you.
Thank you.